After my divorce from Clara was finalized, I simply disappeared from her life. It was a complete and total vanishing act. Everyone who knew us, our entire circle of friends and acquaintances, seemed to believe I was incapable of functioning without her. They started making wagers, betting on how long it would take before I inevitably came crawling back, unable to handle life on my own. Clara herself was the most confident of them all. I later learned she had laughed mockingly at the very idea of my independence. She was absolutely certain it would take only a few days, perhaps even just a few minutes of desperation, for me to break. In her mind, I was just a loser, a man with no significant financial standing and no family left to support him. She truly believed that a single phone call from her, a simple summons, would be enough to have me running back to her side like a loyal, pathetic dog. In the days that followed our separation, true to her prediction, Clara did call me numerous times. The phone would ring, her name flashing on the screen, but I never once answered. Her initial confidence slowly curdled into frustration, and then into a state of outright panic as she tried, and failed, to locate me. 3 years went by before our paths finally crossed again. It happened at a party, a crowded room full of noise and laughter. The woman I remembered as being so impenetrably proud and unshakable, the one who held all the power, now had tears welling in her eyes the very moment she saw me. It was as if she were seeing a ghost. She rushed over and held onto my arm tightly, her grip desperate, as if she feared I might vanish again right before her eyes. That startling encounter sent my mind reeling back to the night our marriage had truly and irrevocably ended. After the divorce papers were signed, she had immediately changed the locks on the house we once shared. I still had some personal belongings inside, boxes of books and old photos that I needed to retrieve. When I went to find her to ask for a way to get my things, I found her and our friends gathered in a private room at an upscale restaurant. I stood just outside the door, hesitating, and I inadvertently walked into a scene I was never meant to witness. Our supposed friends were all there, laughing as they placed bets on when I would come back to her. It was then I heard Clara's familiar, cutting laugh, a sound that could slice through any hope. "A few days? You're being generous. 3 minutes tops," she said with a dismissive wave of her hand. Her voice was laced with a confidence that bordered on cruelty. "Leo is a complete loser. He has no ability to make real money and no parents to bail him out. One call from me, and he'd come running back like a puppy." To drive her point home, she dramatically unclasped the expensive watch I had saved for months to buy for her anniversary and tossed it onto the center of the table with a clatter. "Mark my words," she declared to the room. "He'll be on his knees, begging to remarry me before you know it." One person at the table, a man I barely knew, had the nerve to bet that I wouldn't come back at all. "Ha! You're seriously overestimating Leo," Clara shot back, her tone sharp and final. "He can't survive without me. He wouldn't know where to begin." The room filled with sycophantic cheers and laughter. Her best friend Sarah leaned in and added, "You don't have any actual plans to remarry him, do you? I mean, Leo has been pathologically obsessed with you for years. Don't do anything rash." Before Clara could even formulate a response, another man I recognized from her office interjected, "No way. Clara never even genuinely liked Leo. He was the one who wouldn't stop clinging to her, following her around. He's average-looking, has an average build, and let's not forget he lost his parents a few years ago. He is nowhere near good enough for our Clara." The man then smirked and gestured toward Mark, who was sitting right beside Clara, looking smug. Even if he begged on his hands and knees, Clara wouldn't take him back. "Besides," he added with a knowing look, "with her heart's true person back in town, Leo is absolutely, definitively nothing." Their sneering comments felt like a series of physical blows, each one landing harder than the last. I clenched my fists so tightly that my knuckles turned bone white, desperately trying to keep myself together and not storm into that room. I remembered asking Clara about Mark just once, shortly after we were married. A photo of them together had surfaced, and I'd questioned her about it. She had simply shrugged it off with a casual, disarming smile, saying, "Oh, that? That's all in the past. It's ancient history. The present is what matters." I didn't press her on it. I chose to trust her, to believe in the life we were building. That trust remained intact until Mark returned from his job overseas 6 months ago. She threw a massive, elaborate welcome home party for him, and that was the first night she didn't come home to our bed. It happened a second time a week later, then a third, and soon her absences became a regular, unspoken feature of our failing marriage. Back in that private room, the group continued to chat loudly, their voices echoing in the hallway where I stood frozen. Clara listened with a relaxed, faint smile playing on her lips, looking completely at ease. She would occasionally add a comment, but never once denied anything they said about me or her supposed undying feelings for Mark. Mark, ever the center of attention, finally chimed in with his smooth, charming voice. "You all are being terrible, you know, talking about someone behind their back like this. Besides, Leo didn't really do anything wrong. His only crime was that he just loved Clara far too much." He paused for dramatic effect, then turned to look at her with a soft, intensely affectionate gaze. "It's a shame, really, that Clara still loves me, even after all these years. I honestly never expected her to wait for me." Clara looked genuinely moved by his public declaration. "Marrying Leo was just something I did to please my family," she admitted to the entire room, her voice soft but clear. "I've been waiting for someone else all this time." Everyone in that room, including me standing in the shadows, knew exactly who she was talking about. At that precise moment, the fragile remains of my heart finally shattered into a million irreparable pieces. I had always sensed a certain distance from Clara, an emotional indifference I could never quite name, but I could never put my finger on why. She never forgot a birthday or an anniversary. She always bought the most thoughtful, perfect gifts. After our arguments, she was always the first one to extend an olive branch to try and make things right. I had foolishly mistaken all of that diligence for love, for commitment. Now I understood the cold, hard truth. It was all a meticulously crafted act, a performance she maintained precisely because there was no genuine love to begin with. Our entire 5-year marriage had been nothing more than a carefully constructed play, and I was the unwitting fool in the leading role, the one who believed it was all real. With my heart completely broken, I slowly unclenched my trembling hands and turned to leave the restaurant for good. Just as I took a step, Sarah stepped out of the nearby restroom and saw me. "Leo, you're here! Why didn't you say anything? Come on in and join us." I just shook my head, unable to speak. "No, it's not a good time. I should go." Clara must have heard Sarah's voice because she came out into the hallway a moment later. She crossed her arms, a familiar defensive posture, and gave me a condescending, appraising look. "You're here for me? So why are you leaving without saying a single word?" My tear-streaked face must have looked utterly pathetic next to her cool, unshakable composure. That's just how love works sometimes. The one who is loved holds all the cards and can act with breathtaking recklessness. It's why she could hurt me so freely, trampling all over my dignity without a second thought, because she knew my love for her made me weak. People began to drift out of the private room, their curiosity piqued. Their eyes lingered on me with expressions ranging from pity to outright contempt. Mark, in particular, looked at me with the triumphant, satisfied gaze of a winner looking down on a vanquished loser. "Clara, "Don't be so harsh on poor Leo," he said, though his tone was anything but sincere. "He must be feeling pretty sad after being dumped by you. You should try to speak to him nicely." Clara looked at Mark with adoring eyes and replied, "All right, anything for you?" The group that had gathered around chuckled at their public display of affection. I was suddenly engulfed by a wave of deep, profound regret for ever coming to see Clara that day. Wiping the fresh tears from my face with the back of my hand, I steadied my voice as best I could. "Clara, you changed the access code on the house door, and I left some of my personal things there. That's the only reason I came. But you know what? Forget it. It's just stuff. I don't need them anymore. I'm sorry for bothering you. Goodbye." "Wait," Mark said, stepping closer to me. He put a supposedly friendly arm around my shoulder, but it felt heavy and possessive. "Clara still has things she wants to say to you. You two were married for 5 years after all. She may like me now, but since you've come all this way, things should probably be cleared up properly." He paused, a sly, insidious smile playing on his lips. "Oh, and by the way, you are over Clara, right?" I wasn't entirely sure what he was getting at until he quipped, "A divorce means you won't be bothering Clara anymore, okay? I get jealous, you see. Leo, you wouldn't try to come between us, would you?" His words were like sharp, deliberate daggers. It was a stunning display of hypocrisy. He was the one who had come between us, who had stolen her away, yet here he was telling me not to bother her. "Stop talking such utter nonsense," I spat out, my anger finally boiling over. I angrily shrugged his heavy arm off my shoulder. Before I could say another word, Mark stumbled backward in a great, dramatic display, hitting the wall hard as if I had pushed him with monstrous force. I froze, staring at my own hand in disbelief. I hadn't pushed him that hard. It was a shrug, nothing more. "Leo, what are you doing?" Clara's voice was filled with a terrifying fury as she rushed past me to get to Mark's side. The force of her pushing past me was what truly made me stagger backward. I lost my balance completely at the top of a long flight of stairs. For a moment, I was suspended in air, and then I was tumbling down, a chaotic whirlwind of sharp impacts and blinding pain. When I finally came to a stop at the bottom landing, I felt dizzy and my entire body throbbed with a deep, sickening ache. A moment later, Clara came down the stairs, carefully supporting Mark, who was limping theatrically. Her eyes, when they met mine, were as cold as ice. "You've made your bed. Now lie in it," she said with utter contempt. "You've done everything you can possibly think of to bully Mark, and now you're even resorting to self-harm to get my attention. Leo, we are divorced. If you have any decency left in you, you will stop bothering me and my life." Mark's eyes reddened on cue, and he said weakly, "It's okay, Clara. Leo is just angry that I took you away from him. That's why he—" He broke off, launching into a series of dramatic, hacking coughs. Clara's expression immediately softened with overwhelming concern for him, and the disdain in her eyes toward me intensified. Our so-called friends, who had now gathered at the top of the stairs, were all frowning down at me. With just a few calculated words and a bit of bad acting, Mark had successfully turned every single person against me. But I didn't have the time or energy to worry about their opinions. A searing, unbearable pain was tearing through my stomach. I reached out a trembling hand and managed to grab onto the hem of Clara's pants. "Clara, my stomach hurts," I gasped out, the words barely audible. "You have to take me to the hospital. Please, just call an ambulance." Clara looked down at me, a brief flicker of what might have been concern in her eyes. "Your stomach hurts? Did you hit it on something when you fell?" All I could do in response was cough and groan in agony. "My chest feels tight, and my ankle— I think my ankle is broken," I managed to say. Suddenly, Mark's weak voice cut through my haze of pain. "Clara, do you think my foot will be okay? Will this affect my marathon next month?" Her attention snapped back to him instantly, all concern for me evaporating. "No, of course not. I promise you'll be fine," she said anxiously, her voice full of tenderness. "I'll take you to the hospital right now and we'll get it checked out." "And what about me?" I asked, my voice a desperate whisper. I gripped her pants tighter, foolishly hoping she would look back at me just once. But she harshly shook my hand off of her clothing, and without a backward glance, rushed out of the building with Mark leaning on her for support. I watched her figure recede into the darkness of the night, muttering the truest words I'd ever spoken. "Clara, I hate you," before my world faded to black. When I next opened my eyes, I was in a sterile hospital bed. The first thing I felt was tears rolling down my cheeks as I thought about everything that had happened. My parents were gone, and now the woman I had built my life around had betrayed me in the most complete and cruel way imaginable. My stomach burned with a painful hunger, and when I finally found my phone, I saw that it was 8:15 p.m. I had been unconscious and had slept for an entire day. No one had come to see me. The room was silent and empty. I opened my phone and saw a series of photos Mark had sent to me. They were all of Clara, smiling and tenderly caring for him at his home. In an attached video, I heard Mark say with false understanding, "Maybe you should check on Leo. He seemed pretty hurt, too." Clara's smiling face immediately fell into a scowl. "Why would you even bring him up? What terrible luck! I honestly regret ever marrying such a vile, pathetic man," she snapped as she impatiently stirred a bowl of soup. A dull, heavy ache spread through my chest. The wounds she had inflicted were still raw and bleeding. With a surge of resolve, I slowly got out of the hospital bed, painfully completed the discharge paperwork against medical advice, and left that hospital behind for good. I went to the bank and got a new card, then went to a phone store and got a new number. The first call I made was to my grandparents, who had moved to the United States years ago to live with my aunt and her new family. When they heard the pain in my voice and learned about the divorce, my grandma burst into tears. "My dear child, come back to us," she pleaded. "Just come back to Grandma." I bought a one-way plane ticket that very day and left my old city without a single regret or a second thought. As I boarded the plane and found my seat, I allowed myself one last, fleeting thought of Clara. She and Mark were probably thrilled, celebrating the fact that I was finally and completely gone. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, Clara eventually returned to my empty room and stopped a passing nurse. "Excuse me, where is the patient from bed 23? A man named Leo?" The nurse thought for a moment. "Oh, him. He was discharged. Left on his 3rd day here." She looked Clara up and down curiously. "Who are you to him?" "I'm his wife," Clara blurted out before immediately realizing her mistake. Before she could correct herself, the nurse continued, her tone becoming accusatory. "Well, you are a very irresponsible wife. Mr. Leo's general health was already quite poor, and he needed careful monitoring. This time he suffered severe internal trauma from the fall. We had to perform emergency surgery just to save his life. He needed a lot of rest and observation, yet he insisted on leaving after only 3 days. You should take much better care of him." The nurse walked away, leaving Clara standing there, completely stunned. She frantically dialed my old number over and over, only to be met with the disconnected message. Frustrated and terrified, she pounded her fist against the wall. She searched everywhere. Our old house, my usual hangouts. She even called my few remaining old friends. But no one knew where I was. It was as if I had simply vanished into thin air. A terrible, dark thought began to creep into her mind. The memory of my deep depression after my parents' fatal car accident. Panicked, she rushed home, half expecting the worst, only to be met by Mark at the door. "You divorced him," he said, his voice laced with fury. "Why do you even care if he's alive or dead?" Clara didn't have an answer. 3 years later, I was married and living a new life in the U.S. My wonderful wife, Sophia, and I had a beautiful son, Noah, who was approaching his 2nd birthday. We had flown back to my hometown for the wedding of Sophia's childhood friend. After we landed, Sophia dropped Noah and me at my grandparents' old house, which they had kept all these years, then rushed off to her local office to deal with some urgent work. I pretended to be annoyed. For show. "What's more important, your high-powered job or your loving family?" I teased, holding our son in my arms. Sophia chuckled, leaned in to kiss my forehead, and then took Noah from me. "Honey, just give me 2 more days. I promise, after this big project is done, I will have all the time in the world for you and our little one." She was a workaholic, it was true, but she balanced her demanding job and our family life with a grace that always amazed me. I completely understood, but I had just been looking forward to spending some quiet, peaceful time with her in the city where I grew up. That afternoon, to pass the time, I took Noah for a long walk, and we ended up having an early dinner at a small restaurant I used to love. Unexpectedly, I ran into Sarah there. I just gave her a polite, distant nod and left with my son. Later, I learned she had immediately called Clara. "Hey, Clara, you won't believe this, but I just saw Leo," she'd exclaimed. Clara had apparently laughed sarcastically. "Stop joking, Sarah. He's been gone for a long, long time." But Sarah had insisted. "No, I'm being serious. He had a little boy with him too, maybe 2 years old." Still, Clara had remained resigned and cynical. If he were really alive, why hadn't he come looking for her after all this time? Her search had yielded nothing, after all. The next day, Sophia, Noah, and I went to the wedding. Sophia was quickly whisked away by the bride for a private chat, leaving me in the groom's room with our son. The room was bustling with activity, but the groomsmen were fantastic, taking turns playing with Noah so I could have a moment to breathe. As the ceremony neared, the room became increasingly crowded, and Noah started to get restless and fussy. Fearing a full-blown tantrum, I took him outside for some fresh air to calm him down. "Leo!" I heard a woman's voice call my name in the hotel hallway. I turned and saw a familiar face, but I couldn't immediately place it in this new context. Then, someone grabbed my shoulder, and I turned to find myself face to face with Clara. She was much thinner than I remembered, gaunt even, and her eyes were red-rimmed as she stared at me, her voice trembling with shock. "You're not dead. You're alive. Then why didn't you come back? Where have you been for the past 3 years?" Her desperate gaze then dropped to my son, who was looking at her with wide, curious eyes. Her grip on my arm tightened instantly. Is he mine?" she whispered, her voice shaking uncontrollably. Her expression was a chaotic, unreadable mixture of sadness, profound surprise, shock, and a strange, misplaced joy. It was surreal to see her so flustered. She had always been the one in control, the one who was composed and rational. I politely but firmly pushed her hand away from my arm. "It's been a long time, Clara. I'm married now, so please don't grab me like this in public." Seeing my cold, detached demeanor, her face stiffened. "Come on, Leo," she said, managing a bitter, humorless laugh. "You left without a word, disappeared completely just to get back at me, didn't you? Well, it worked. I've been looking for you for 3 agonizing years. Isn't this enough for you? Is this our child? The one we lost? They told us we couldn't have children, remember? But I never believed it. Now that you're back, we can take care of him together." My heart ached with a sudden, sharp pain at the mention of the child we had lost years ago, but that pain was quickly overshadowed by sheer shock at her audacity. She had constructed an entire narrative in her head, where my disappearance was all an elaborate revenge plot against her. I kept my face a blank mask and spoke in a stern, low voice. "Are you deaf? I told you I am married. If you're not feeling well, you should seriously consider seeing a doctor instead of standing here talking utter nonsense." Clara was stunned into silence. As I turned to walk away, she recovered and chased after me. "How can that be, Leo? Explain yourself. Are you really married?" Before I could answer her, Sophia appeared at my side as if from nowhere. She wrapped a protective arm around my shoulder, pulling Noah and me close, and then firmly pushed Clara away with her other hand. "You need to stay away from my husband and my son," she said, her voice as cold and sharp as ice. Clara, losing what little patience she had left, tried to shake Sophia's hand off. That was it. That was the final straw. I couldn't hold back my anger and my protective instincts any longer. I raised my hand and slapped Clara hard across the face. The sharp sound echoed in the quiet hallway. She fell silent, looking at me with wide eyes full of disbelief and a raw, fresh hurt. You hit me." I shook out my numb, tingling hand. "I am going to say this one more time, Clara. I am married. The person standing beside me is my wife. Do not speak this nonsense ever again, and do not disrupt my life or my family's life again." On the drive home, the mood in the car was heavy and silent. Once we were inside our house, Sophia pushed me against the front door and began to kiss me with a desperate, urgent passion. I gently grabbed her wandering hands, breathless. "There is nothing between me and her, Sophia. I swear to you." She pulled back, her voice husky and low. "There's no need to explain anything, Leo. Just enjoy what's coming next." The next morning, I came downstairs and saw Sophia patiently coaxing Noah to eat his breakfast. I remembered dreaming of a quiet, domestic scene just like this with Clara, a beautiful dream that had been violently shattered. I honestly thought my life was over back then, but then I met Sophia. She was a good friend of my aunt's, and she was the one who picked me up from the airport when I first arrived in the States, a broken man, distraught, and crying over my past. She was just there for me, quietly offering tissues and support without judgment. My aunt had encouraged me to give her a chance, and to my surprise, I found that her calm, steady, caring nature was the perfect balm for my wounded soul. We fell in love, we got married, and together we built a beautiful, peaceful life. Clara, however, was persistent. She somehow got my new phone number and called. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice tight with frustration. Her voice on the other end was pleading, almost begging. "I don't want anything. I just want to talk to you. I miss you, Leo. Ever since you left, I can't forget you. I still live in what was once our home, completely stuck in the past. Please, come back." Her words felt disturbingly familiar, almost a carbon copy of the things she once said to Mark. "If you're sick, you need to see a doctor," I scoffed. "Delusions like that, if left untreated, can turn into a real problem. I am happy now. Please do not disturb my life anymore." She faltered for a moment, then asked softly, "Are you really married to her?" When I confirmed that we'd been married for 2 years, she let out a long, self-mocking laugh. "I searched for you in our country for 3 years, and in less than a single year, you created a whole new family, got married, and had a kid, leaving me all alone in my pain. Are you really that heartless, Leo? What about me? What am I supposed to do?" I stayed silent for a long half-minute. Fate is truly unpredictable. The very person who had pushed me into the deepest, darkest pit was now at the bottom of it, pleading for me to pull her up. I sighed and hung up the phone without another word. But she didn't stop. She bombarded me with messages, and then somehow she followed me to my apartment building. Seeing her stubborn, forlorn figure waiting outside, I sighed. It wouldn't look good if Sophia saw her there. So I made the decision to meet up with her at a nearby coffee shop to end things once and for all. When I got there, though, I only saw Mark. He looked annoyed. "You're like a ghost that just won't leave," he sneered, looking me up and down. "Since you couldn't beat me for Clara, you faked your death and left the country, letting her think about you all these years. And I thought you were so innocent." I couldn't help but smile sarcastically. "I'm married now, Mark. You don't need to be so hostile. Where is Clara?" He accused me of playing elaborate games, of trying to get revenge on them both. It was the same tired old trick from 3 years ago. "A dirty heart sees everything as dirty," I mocked him. "Believe me, I don't give a damn about trash like Clara." "You're giving Clara way too much credit, Leo," a broken voice said from behind me. I turned around to see Clara standing there, looking pale and pitiable. Before I could speak, Mark grabbed my wrist and launched into his classic performance, gasping and pleading for me to give Clara back to him. Then he screamed and started to fall backward dramatically. But this time, I was ready. I caught him before he could fall. His act stopped abruptly, a hint of panic flashing in his eyes. I let him go and then kicked him hard in the shin. "I already said whoever wants that trash can have her. Just stop bothering me," I shouted. He fell to the ground, this time in real pain, curling up and looking pathetically at Clara. But this time, when Clara stepped forward, she shielded me. "Stop acting, Mark," she said, her voice cold and dead. 3 years ago, you used this same trick to make me make an irreversible mistake. I will not repeat it." His eyes widened in disbelief as she turned and walked away, leaving him on the cafe floor crying out her name in desperation. Outside, in the cool air, her hands twitched nervously at her sides. "Why didn't you tell me about your injury back then?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "If you had told me, if I had known, maybe we wouldn't have divorced. We might have had a chance." Her words made me laugh, a short, bitter sound. "What chance? Let me remind you, Clara. Back then, you were the one who shoved me down the stairs for Mark. I was on the floor, my stomach in agony, begging you to take me to the hospital, and you abandoned me there to take Mark to get his sore foot checked because he was worried about his stupid marathon. A random passerby was the one who called 911 for me." Her face turned deathly pale as she suddenly dropped her head. "I'm sorry, Leo," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I didn't know, I didn't realize it would be that serious." Her words were hollow, empty, and years too late. "It's all in the past now," I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. "It doesn't matter anymore. You were not a good wife, and you are not fit to be a mother. My wife now is far more competent and loving than you ever were. If there's nothing else, let's just leave it at that. Don't disturb my life again." She could only watch as I walked away. After a few steps, I turned back, and I saw a flicker of desperate hope in her eyes. I gave her a small, tight, unforgiving smile. "I will never forgive you, Clara. This is goodbye forever." Her last words, "I wish you happiness," were carried away by the wind. I was already happy. When I got home, I told Sophia everything, every last detail. The honesty didn't create a rift. It brought us even closer. A few days later, we flew back to the States. I later found out from her friend, Daniel, the groom from the wedding, that Mark had tried to slander me online with a creatively edited video from the coffee shop. But Sophia was already handling it. She had hired Daniel as our attorney, and they won the lawsuit with ease. Mark had to issue a public apology and pay a hefty compensation. As soon as he did, I made sure the real story and the verdict were sent to several media outlets, just so he could have a taste of what public rumor and humiliation truly felt like. Life moved forward. I put my phone down and picked up my coat, ready to take my son to his early education class. But as I got into the car, I saw her again standing across the street. Clara. It was like she had lost her mind completely. She had followed me abroad and was now frequently seen loitering near my house. I knew she wanted to make amends, to somehow turn back the clock and undo the damage. But some wrongs can't be made right. A bell cannot be unrung. We all need to move forward, and my life was here, now, with my family.